Welcome back to the show. Dana and I are talking about off ramps. It's so funny. Inevitably
Yeah.
in our work, we think about transitions, right? Change,
Yep.
transitions, moving from something I like doing to something I don't like doing.
Hmm.
Having to, it was interesting. Dana brought up off camera to put greetings under
Hmm.
transitions as well, which I
Hmm.
can't tell you how many
Yeah,
of my
like if you're
clients.
if you're leaving a party or something, can you just
Yeah.
bolt? And
Yeah.
because it you have to do the whole ending. It just drive me nuts with going to parties, and my wife would have to say goodbye to everybody. And I'm like, can we just go? And then of course that would turn into a whole other conversation saying
Yeah.
goodbye. And I'm just like, God, what the hell? Made me start to think about the off ramp kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
why we need that. Hmm.
Why we need that and why, like, I think sometimes the transition or not having an off ramp or an exit plan or escape plan
Hmm.
prevents people from doing a part of the
Yeah,
event,
at all. Yeah.
right? So we get stuck in this all or nothing kind of place, and then it
Hmm.
prevents, like, most of my clients, well, a lot of my clients don't want to go to parties at all. Let's just be honest.
Well,
But
there's
when
that.
it
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
to like funerals or birthdays or
Uh-huh.
weddings, let's just say, of people that they
Yeah.
care about and they want
Yeah.
to go, but they
Hmm.
feel so paralyzed in going because it just
It feels
feels so
so
overwhelming.
overwhelming, right? Yeah. And there's so many things outside your control. An off ramp gives you some locus of control, again, gives you some control. Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife is, probably people on here know that I don't like to travel for all these reasons. But she lives in she grew up in Helena, Montana, and so she goes back there at least once a year. And there's a big event going on that I don't get into details, but it's a really important family related event. And so she has been planning going. She's going to drive this year. It's a long drive. It's like 10 hours if you just go straight through it. So she's planned some stops along the way. And so yesterday she was a little more quiet than normal, and she kept asking me, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Are you
Are
okay?
you
You live
okay?
with a psychologist."
Yeah.
Um, and she says, "I'm starting to already get worried about driving to Helena. This is in 2 months. This is 2 months from now." Um, she has a fear of flying, but she does it. And the driving thing she was focusing on was, she's sort of like me, a little more genderqueer, not, and she gets mistaken for being a boy, for being male. And she's worried about going through parts of that drive, Idaho, Idaho, who has laws. You could actually be arrested if you're in the quote wrong gender bathroom. So she's had people, and I've had this too, where people have looked at me or said you're in the wrong bathroom or whatever, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake. So
Really,
all the
Dana?
trans issues of, oh yeah, lots of times. And I'm just like, what I really want to do, my fantasy, is just to pull my shirt up and show my boobs and just stand there like that. But then I get arrested for indecent exposure. So I usually am just like, whatever. And I have a lower voice, so people, God, not when I have long hair, it's short hair. So she's like, I'm really worried, especially there. And I said, well, we start problem solving it, right? Can you make sure you have enough gas when you leave Spokane so you don't have to stop at all in Idaho. Just go, she just drives through the panhandle of that. And that wasn't really sort of giving, it just felt like something else.
Yeah.
And I said, what if you flew instead of drive? And then there's the fear of flying, what's going on with TSA, although that's getting better. And this is a long roundabout way, sort of like when you first start talking to someone about these things, there's all of it, right? And as you keep talking it out, she says, people would be mad at me if I didn't go. And I said, okay, so would you be mad at yourself if you missed? It's a museum dedication with her parents named on something. It's this big thing that's only going to happen once. Would you be worried about missing that? She says, I'm fine once I get to Helena. I want to do all that. It's the getting there. And I was like, okay. I said, can you give yourself permission, at least in your mind, to not go? She says, no, but I want to go. I said, okay, But just as a mental exercise,
Mhm.
on one side, you have to have a I won't go at all the way to I'll commit to still driving. And then I always imagine like when you learned in math, there was a long line and then all the little tick marks were
Yeah,
like a
the number
centimeter or
line.
whatever. Yeah,
Mhm.
number lines. And you have to keep putting enough ticks in there that you feel comfortable at any given point in time. And that has to be fully committing to driving still, even though it scares you. And there has to be the exit ramp of not going at all. And she kept saying, but I want to go. I said, I know. But knowing that you can say no, now it's in your wheelhouse and you've done that exercise of I don't have to do everything. I can do these tick marks up to it, whatever. And then we talked a little bit more about flying might be better because it's only like an hour and a half of worry versus 10 hours over 3 days, you know. Um, and then we woke up this morning and she goes, do people tend to be more anxious at night? And I was like,
Oh, yeah.
what? Why are you? I said, well, yeah,
Oh.
because you have the burn of the day.
Oh,
Now
yeah.
you're quiet and not doing. You know, you're not engaged at work anymore. So now it's quiet time, and it all tends. Even cortisol goes up and peaks at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And she goes, because I was so worried last night, and this morning I woke up and I'm like, I can drive. It's no big deal. And I was like, I do think her anxiety peaks later. All of us do. But I said, I think a lot of it had to do with you giving yourself permission, having that off ramp. So it wasn't this huge thing.
Mhm.
How do you break it down? She even asked me, she says, there's no way you'll go with me, huh? And I was, I just said no. There's lots of reasons. I mean, work, it won't work, but I just said, I know it's hard. I know it'd be easier if I went with you, but I'm not going. I have to say no. And she's like,
Mhm.
okay, I just need to know. So that flushing it out, but having to give yourself, even if it's in your mind, the out, right?
Yeah.
So something like going to a wedding, not having to go to
The
the
reception.
celebration after,
Right.
or you decide to leave the reception when you feel like it, and you don't, we call it bolting. We're just like, are you ready to go? And we're like, yeah, we just like we go to a baseball game. We know we don't have to stay the whole game. If one of us
Yeah.
gets to the point where we're just like, I'm done, let's go, saying that and structuring your life so that you can do that. I mean, when you're a kid, it's harder, but you can, have your parents understand that and give you that out. Um, it's changes everything. I mean,
Yeah.
you mentioned a client that was struggling with that, and once they had that aha moment, it's like the anxiety goes away. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great.
The minute I said, "What's in the middle?" Like,
Yeah,
even if okay, like, you wanna go and you wanna honor, but you're so overwhelmed by the thought of going. It's like, well,
yeah,
let's break down very specifically what's the overwhelming part, right?
yeah, yeah.
Because if it all feels overwhelming and you can't be specific about your worry, then
Mhm.
you actually have a very difficult time, and to your point, sometimes going through the exercise of imagine like, not making it like, turning an abstract thing into something tangible.
Yeah, what are
What is
all
it
yeah, exactly,
exactly.
exactly. Yeah,
What is
yeah.
it gonna be like to go and stay fully and do 100% of the things? What is it gonna
Mm,
be to not go at all, 0%?
yeah,
What is
exactly.
everything in the
Yeah.
middle? The minute I said to one of my clients, because, like, I wanna go to this wedding, I wanna honor these people, but
Mhm.
weddings are just so overwhelming. What part is
Yeah,
overwhelming? Well,
yeah.
it's like the dancing and then you can't ever leave and you have to be the last person to leave. I was like, "Wait a minute, hold on. One, you
Yeah,
don't have to be the last person to leave. You don't?
yeah,
Two,
yeah.
you don't have to go to the reception. What? Huh? Like,
You could be the
what?
first person to leave.
Right." And I was like, "Listen, if you feel bad about not saying goodbye to the bride or the groom or whoever your like whomever your friend is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Whoever that is, before the wedding, send them a
Tell them
text and
ahead of
be like,
time.
"Hey,
Yeah,
I'm going to be at
yeah,
the ceremony, right?
yeah.
But I'm not able to go to the reception. I just want to
Mhm,
let you
mhm.
know that, you won't see me there, but I'm wishing you all the best, etc." Like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
more
Because then
that's
they'll
going above and beyond
appreciate that
even.
you thought about it and you did
Yeah.
part of that and you do what you can do. Yeah,
What
yeah.
can you do? You can leave. Even the idea, I have to be the last person. Huh?
Wow.
What do you
Yeah,
mean
the
you have to be the
aha.
who told you that?
Yeah.
He's like, I don't
Right.
know. I just thought like you have to wait until everyone leaves. It's like,
Yes.
no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. You can leave and whenever you want to leave, right?
Right. Right. Right.
That was the
And then you sort of,
thing.
yeah, and you come up then against, if you're trying to get that exit ramp, we're
Yeah,
making it sound super easy. It's not,
it's not.
because there are all of the like repercussions of something like that. And then you can unpack those, like people will be mad at me. People are going to say, why did you just leave all of a sudden? And honestly, if they know you're neurodivergent, great, just tell them it's that. And it's just a thing. If they don't, just say, I'm learning to take better care of myself. I realize sometimes that's overwhelming for me. And I decided at one point in time, I felt overwhelmed and I decided to leave, and if
Yeah.
people in your life don't understand that, if they give you crap for that, that's probably not people that you really want to have in your life, or you need to have a conversation with them about not judging you. So there are a lot of sort of, if we got that line continuum and all those little ticks, there are little spikes that come off of each of those that
Yeah.
have things idiopathic to each person that you have to unpack and sort of challenge as well, right? And then worst case scenario, what if someone is mad at you because you left? Then what? Doing the what would happen, so that you are defining, like you said, all those things, and it's not just kind of ominous thing that's undefined. Nor usually when I do the and then what technique, I call it with clients,
Yeah.
and we keep saying then what, then what, then what, they get to a point where they're like, oh, or they get to a point where they can make a major decision, which is, I know they're going to be mad at me. It's going to totally suck. But for me, it's better that I meet my own needs than their needs, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So not just doing the along the line, but each little spike for you that comes up, go ahead and talk that through, work that through. These are like versions of transitions. That's what made me think of the topic to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is that exit ramp or even an on ramp. I've done
Mm-hmm.
that where someone's had something going on and I don't want to be there at the beginning of it. And if it's my school does a lot of things off campus where they're having gatherings and those kinds of things. And then it occurred to me, my wife had said this last time. She's like, why don't you, if it's starting at 5, just go at like 7 and stay for a half an hour and then leave. And I'm like, I could do that. I could
Yeah.
actually do that. So you're not dealing with the awkwardness of when it's starting and like no one else is there. It's in full swing and you sort of get out. So it's making the transition yours. So making the transition be in a way that works for you, right? And sort of getting creative about it, right?
Yeah. I'm laughing
Yeah.
because, you know, neurodivergent people have a reputation of being very rule bound or rule
Yeah,
followers,
right.
right?
Yes,
And
it's so hard. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And this is kind of where some of these quote unquote rules come in, right? The party starts
Yes.
at 6 and it ends
Hmm.
at 9. That
Yeah.
means that I have to
Yeah.
be there before 6 or at 6 and leave at 9, right? That's
Yeah.
why there's
Yeah.
no other thought that I could go late or leave early,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
some of these, like just having some of these conversations and working this out, following it through, and not
Mhm.
leaving it to your imagination. I think that's the
Right.
other piece, right? That, sometimes I'll say to a client of mine, or lots of clients of mine, where I'll say, is this a thinking problem?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying it's not a real problem because clearly you're distressed.
Right.
Is this a
Exactly.
thinking problem, though? The
Yeah.
way in which
Yeah.
you're thinking about it. Is that where the suffering's coming from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
You're sort of
Um,
creating your own prison. Yeah.
you kind yeah,
Yeah.
I see this all the time actually, especially in my
Hmm.
very, very bright, very, very
Yeah.
anxious clients. Right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like, wow, you came up with like 32 different prisons for yourself. And none
Yeah.
of those really are even, I mean, they're possible, but unlikely in
Yeah.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
and if it did happen, if all 32 of those things did happen, like,
Let's talk about
then
it.
what?
Yep.
You
Yeah.
know?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
Dana, you brought up something off camera that I think is so interesting. Let's talk about
Hmm.
social rules and social nuances. But
Yeah.
like, should we force people to say goodbye to people? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, to your
Why
point in a
is that? Yeah.
party,
Yeah. Yeah.
going around and then you say goodbye and then that goodbye leads to a conversation and then this goodbye leads to a
Yeah.
conversation and this goodbye leads. Now, in the Asian culture,
Oh,
If there's a
yeah.
party, it is expected that you not only say hello to every single person, but you say goodbye to every single person.
Oh,
That is the
God.
cultural expectation. I would say in general. Clearly
Yeah,
there's going
that
to
would
be some
make me not wanna
like
go at
exceptions.
all. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
So I can
And
see,
it's
and
you're rude if you don't then, right? Like, they're
yeah,
gonna
it is
talk
really
about you.
considered
Okay.
rude. It really is. And
Okay.
that the greetings oftentimes also include physicality,
Oh, hugging and yeah, 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 yeah,
kissing,
yeah,
and
yep,
I'm looking
yep.
at you, Filipino people. This is
On
like
the lips,
my
kissing
husband
on the
my no,
lips.
my husband's
Yeah.
side is and they're the warmest. I mean, they're just the
Mm,
warmest
yeah,
people and
yeah.
so
It's so
family
sweet, but
oriented
yeah.
and so sweet. But there is this, it's like short of a molestation, like it's like I'm like, you know, um, and so I say that in the most
Uh,
endearing way.
yeah.
If you're Filipino and you or Filipina and you want to leave that in the comments, I'm looking at you, right?
I had a friend
But
of mine who's got Lebanese roots, and he would always kiss me on the lips. And I finally just said, "I love you, but I am never kissing you on lips again. And I'd appreciate it if you didn't." And he was just like, "Oh yeah, you should have told me like 10 years ago."
it's
Yeah. So I
cultural.
get it. Yeah.
It's culturally
Yeah.
acceptable, right? I don't
Yep.
we Kissing is not necessarily involved on the lips in as I'm thinking, but lots of it's like hugging and touching and figuring out if you've
Yes.
gained
Yeah.
weight or not by, and then
Oh
making a
yeah.
comment about
Yeah.
it. And like it's always this thing
Yeah.
of um and so I think like how do you navigate these situations? Going
Yes.
back
Yeah.
to how do you honor
Yeah.
yourself?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I can't
This
tell
is
you how
great
many.
because
Yeah, yeah,
it reminds me of I've talked on here before. Two psychologists that I know in Rhode Island. They're great. They have a site called Autism Level Up. Do check them out. And one of them is autistic, and this was a couple months ago. They had posted about having name tags if they go somewhere and saying like I'm leaving by 9. But they actually had a gathering at their house, and they made it clear that this party ends at 9 o'clock. And they had some fun with it, right? So they had their friends when they came in. They had like this little fake contract thing that they had to sign. I'm going to leave. And then they like give announcements and they had fun with it. Like when 9 o'clock came and everybody's like, okay, we're leaving, bye. And it was that predictable ending. When
yeah,
it's at your house, the on ramp. Are you just going to take off to another room? What are you going to do? And it got me thinking, well, like what you're talking about. Why is it always us bending to the neurotypical world? It can be, let's flip the norms and do it the other way. Now, these are people that are very out about being neurodivergent, and they have a lot of neurodivergent friends. So it sort of works, right?
yeah.
It reminds me, I have a neighbor that him and his husband come over. He says he's neurospicy, and he knows that they keep inviting us over there. My wife goes and I don't. And they're really great about it because they know I'm
Yeah.
autistic. And they came over once and it was happy hour. We were going to do 4 to 6. And it got to be around 6 o'clock. And he was like, all right, 6 o'clock. We said happy hour. We want to honor that. We don't want to overwhelm you. And I said, it's actually okay. I'm having fun. They stayed like an extra half an hour, but they checked in like when they were leaving. Are
Yeah.
you sure that was okay? I'm like, in the moment, if we had scheduled it that way to begin with, I'd have been overwhelmed. But like in the moment, it was okay. So having those kinds of conversations. I had a client, you're talking about the wedding thing, or when you have a family that culturally was if memory serves, a Greek family, very
Mm-hmm.
much about um, and so they had a deck of these cards. I don't know where they got them. We talked about making them, and then she found them, and you can buy them. And they were like these little affirmation cards. And so what she added to the back was a written note of, um, "I'm leaving, and I it was something like long goodbyes are hard for me or whatever." And so she just ran around the room and handed a card to all these various people. And they're really sweet things like, I love you so much. I'm just leaving because I'm overwhelmed or whatever. So she sort of did that version in a quick way. And then when someone tried to stop her, she said, oh, I need to give a card to everybody. They had no idea what she's doing. Just sort of gave a card to everybody and then slinked out, right? And then the whole family had a conversation about it after the fact on some huge group chat they have. And they were like, that was actually really cool. So now you've invited this new norm into there for that person.
Yeah.
So there can be fun ways to do this to create. It doesn't have to all be like hard therapy work. It can be, you can implement it in ways that work well for you and get people to understand a little bit more about how you operate, and not in a judgy way, but in a like, oh, this person needs that, and that's cool. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, how do you honor yourself in the midst of
Mhm.
whatever the expectations are and
Yeah.
know that they're not just two options?
Yeah. Right. Yep.
They're not usually just two options.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how can we empower you to make a third?
Yeah, when we were able to legally get married, we
Mhm.
had been together 12 years already, but we got legally married, and it comes up in your memories and like Facebook. And everybody's like, "Oh, that day was so special. It was so much fun, and so great. You guys were." And my memory of that day was just complete pandemonium, overwhelm. It was is that we had a reception at our house, and I was just like, I should do this, and probably if I had to do it again, I would, because it's like one day and it's a big event. But I was just like, oh my god, that was not. I'm getting married was great, but the reception afterwards, that was not and
Yeah.
fun, and that was way before I was out as autistic too. So
Yeah.
yeah. Oh
You're
god.
like, next time we're going to a restaurant, we're we're
Where
doing it,
we can all eat and I can leave.
and I'm leaving early from my reception.
I know I'm one of the people that got married, but I'm out of here. Yeah, totally. Oh, too funny. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh. I mean, again, honor what you need.
Yeah,
Honor what
yeah,
you need, right?
yeah. Figure out the ramps you need, and the spikes along the way, and work it out. Yeah,
Figure out your off
yeah.
ramps,
Hmm.
and exit plans, escape plans.
Hmm.
They tend to allow you some space to honor what it is you want to
That's right.
do,
Yeah, yeah.
especially relationally
And
anyway.
if it is a worry about like a cultural norm and those kinds of things, there's still some things you could probably figure out to make it work.
100%.
That's my point. Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Cool.
100%. All
Mhm.
right, everyone. Well, be good to you, be good to others, and we will catch you in the next episode. Bye.
Hurry, leave.
And I don't go bye.